There might not be a show that I look forward to more than this one, when for the first time in 9 months, we have a full Saturday of college football to react to. And let me just tell you, this is why college football, there is no sport on planet Earth like college football. It is because we have spent literally, 8 months, 9 months since that championship game, Georgia, Alabama, talking and thinking about Notre Dame at Ohio State, talking and thinking about Oregon playing Georgia in Atlanta. Yet we are going to lead the show with what I believe to be the biggest and most important result of the show. And it came from an unranked team from the SEC, a Pac-12 team in Utah. And I thought this was no doubt the game of the day. Florida beating Utah 29-26 in the Swamp. And when I think about this game, a couple things stand out. First of all, the thing that stands out more than anything is how much was really on the line for both teams, right? You think about, just from the Florida perspective, first-year head coach, coming off a disappointing season, completely fell apart, lost to South Carolina, lost to all these teams, Missouri down the stretch. And you think about everything that Billy Napier inherited and everything that went into this opener of the season, it's just a lot of pressure. And the pressure is ratcheted up because they got a tough schedule right out of the gate. They play Kentucky this coming weekend. They play Tennessee in a few weeks in Knoxville. And so you talk about a pressure cooker of a week one game for Billy Napier at home against a top 10 team in Utah. And then from the Utah perspective, look, we talked about it on Friday's podcast. If you listen to the college football betting show, we talked about it from the Utah perspective. I think they had as much pressure on them as anybody, because if you really are a playoff contender, and frankly, if you're representing your entire conference, you're going on the road, but you're doing it against a team that isn't Georgia, isn't Alabama, isn't Texas A&M. This is a game that you're supposed to win if you're Utah and a real playoff contender. And so when I look at this game, when I think about this game, and when I was watching this game on Saturday, it was that great college football moment where you could just feel the tension in the air. And this is no disrespect to the teams that play group of 5 teams in week 1, or the teams that play on a neutral field in week 1 or whatever. But I think being in the Swamp, night 1, you could feel the tension in the air. You could feel what it meant for both teams. And you could feel just the intensity of this game, every single possession, every single play, and the billing lived up to it, right? This was a game that I said I believed was the most intriguing game coming into the weekend, and it delivered with 5 different lead changes starting in the final 2 minutes of the first half, into the second half. And then on top of that, how about this? The way the game ended, just iconic, right? Florida scores with a couple minutes to go. Utah gets the ball back. They drive the length of the field. They're in the red zone. There's 17 seconds left. What are you going to do? They're out of timeouts. They drop back. Are they going to, try to just hold for a field goal? Are they going to throw the ball out of bounds? No. Cam Rising, the Utah quarterback, tries to make a play. It is intercepted by Florida, and Florida ends up winning this game. Again, 29-26. Now, I often say this, especially this time of year. This seems to be, by the way, my September phrase during college football season, which is that, oftentimes the more interesting story is in the losing locker room. But I'll say this, I think the more interesting story is actually in the winning locker room, because if I had a single takeaway from this entire weekend in college football, it was the Florida Gators, and they just blew me away. And it's no disrespect to Georgia. It's no disrespect, maybe in a negative way, to Oregon, or in a negative way, maybe Ohio State didn't look as good as we thought. There is no bigger takeaway for me than the Florida Gators in week 1. And what I would say about the Florida Gators is this. If you listen to this podcast, you know how I feel about Billy Napier. When he was hired, I really liked the hire, and it was for all the obvious reasons. Son of a coach, coached under Nick Saban, coached under Dabo Swinney at Clemson. But then more importantly, what stood out to me is who he was and what Florida needed at this exact moment. So Florida, again, coming off that Dan Mullen era where there were highs, there were lows, you win a division title, you go to a couple big bowl games. But at the end of the day, it was ebb and flow, peak and valley, good win, bad loss, weird press conferences, whatever. And they just really, frankly, needed an adult in the room. My buddy Jason Martin, who I host with on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday nights, said that exact thing. He said Florida just needed an adult, and that's who Billy Napier is. If you read anything about him, accountability, culture, teamwork, this is a guy that no detail oriented, no detail is too small. Was reading an article earlier this offseason about how, he wasn't happy with the parking situation for his players at the practice facility. And so he went to the administration and said, what can I do here? What can we do about weights, facilities, meals, whatever? No details too small. I really like this hire, but I'll also readily admit that I thought it was going to take a lot longer than one game for me to be blown away by him. And that, to me, is why Florida is the biggest story. They're the most interesting story. And if I have one big takeaway here in week one, it's how impressed I am with the Florida Gators. And let me explain why. Again, I thought Billy Napier would get there. I thought it would take some time, though. And so for me, and I know people are going to say, oh, Utah's in the Pac-12 and they don't play anybody and they're overrated. Listen, the last time we saw Utah, they went to the Rose Bowl and went score for score with an Ohio State offense that could not be stopped. Final score 48-45. Utah put up 45 points against Ohio State the last time we saw them. So don't tell me they don't play anybody, they're not good, they're not this. And why I am so impressed by Florida, why I'm impressed by Billy Napier, I just didn't think this was going to happen in week one. And what I mean by this is the following. You're playing not just a tough opponent, not just a ranked opponent. You are playing one of the most physical, tough, organized, detail-oriented teams in college football. And I just thought it's going to take some time, right? It takes everybody some time. And what I loved about the Florida effort, Florida was just as physical, just as tough, just as mean, just as disciplined as the Utah Utes, okay? Florida finished the game almost equal in total yards, 451 to 446 for Utah. They had 283 yards rushing for 7 yards per carry. Now, part of that was Anthony Richardson. We're going to talk about him in a minute. But it was just a situation where this was the game. I mean, you could see the scenario where they take Kentucky or they take LSU or they take Texas A&M. But week one at home against such a physical, tough, mistake-free team like Utah, and Florida matched the physicality, matched the intensity, matched really, if you want to use the word accountability, that's really what stood out to me about this weekend, was the idea that if you look at Florida, remember, this was a team that last year, and I have the notes with me right here, so let me read this, 115th in turnover margin, which means they turned the ball over a ton, didn't get many back, and then 119th in penalties. And so, yeah, the penalties need to be worked on a little bit. They had 7 on Saturday night in the Swamp. But again, go back and look at last year. They were a complete mess. They were completely disorganized. They made the biggest mistakes at the worst possible times. And so to be together, accountable, go toe for toe with Florida or with Utah, I am so impressed. And then let me take it a step further. I am so freaking impressed with Anthony Richardson. And you guys and girls know every Friday we do where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. Well, not only was I dead wrong on the Florida Gators, I was dead wrong on Anthony Richardson. Listen, we all knew the physical tools were there. This is a guy that was being projected by some as a first-round NFL draft pick, despite the fact that he started one game last year. But I sat there and said, this is a guy that came into the season with 66 total career passes. How can I get excited about this guy? I don't care about the physical tools. I need to see it. Well, I saw it on Saturday night in the Swamp because this guy was unbelievable. 168 yards passing, 17 of 24, completed 71% of his passes. How about this? 106 yards rushing, almost 10 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and of course that 2-point conversion, which was just iconic, okay? Listen, I don't do Heisman talk in week one, but one, he was the best player of week one in college football. And then 2, and maybe more importantly, you talk about a Heisman moment, that 2-point conversion against Utah, credit Anthony Richardson. So listen, I don't want to overdo it with Florida because it's one game. One game doesn't make a season. It doesn't make a career, right? As I've said, they got Kentucky this coming week. They got Tennessee in a few weeks. But at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, if you're new to the show, if you're not new to the show, I'm doing the show tonight. My old radio partner, Arnie Spanner, used to say that all the time. The show is tonight. Well, all we have to base our information on tonight is the fact that Florida just beat a top 10 team at home, and I could not be more impressed. Really quickly,